This house doesn't belong to you! Get out!
I came home a day early. No noise, no scent of betrayal. Just the usual silence that had grown between Megan and me over the past 6 months. The house felt different, though. Electricity in the air, like the moment before lightning strikes. I dropped my duffel bag quietly by the front door. Something was off. Megan's car was in the driveway, but so was Travis's black BMW. My younger brother never visited without calling first. Hell, he barely visited at all since Dad handed him control of our family's construction company 3 months ago. The floorboards creaked under my feet as I climbed the stairs. Each step felt deliberate, measured. I'd been planning this moment for weeks, but now that it was here, my heart hammered against my ribs like a caged animal. I reached the bedroom door. It was slightly ajar. Through the crack, I saw my wife Megan on her knees in front of my brother Travis. He was sitting on the edge of our bed, pants around his ankles, head thrown back in pleasure. When he opened his eyes and saw me standing there, he didn't even flinch. Instead, he smirked. Well, Travis said, pushing Megan away from him. Big brother's home early. Megan spun around, her face flushing red. Ryan, save it, Travis interrupted, standing up and pulling his pants back on with infuriating casualness. First, I got Dad to hand me the company. Now I got your wife, too. Might as well get out now before this gets ugly. I reached into my duffel bag and pulled out the .44 Magnum I'd been carrying for the past month. Travis's smirk faltered slightly, but before I could raise the tool, the wardrobe exploded open. Out stepped my father, looking like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. His silver hair was disheveled, his usually pristine suit wrinkled and stained. Ryan, don't, Dad gasped, stumbling forward. This isn't what it looks like. That was the moment they all lost control of the script. They never expected me to do what I did next. I lowered the tool and grinned. Actually, Dad, it's exactly what it looks like, I said. And I've been rehearsing for this moment, every single step. Let me take you back to where this really started. 3 months ago, I was sitting in the boardroom of Manning Construction, the company my grandfather built from nothing, that my father expanded into a multi-million-dollar operation, and that I'd been groomed to inherit since I was 12 years old. Travis sat across from me, flanked by 2 lawyers I'd never seen before. Dad was at the head of the table, looking uncomfortable but determined. The board has voted, Dad announced. Effective immediately, Travis will assume the role of Chief Executive Officer. I felt the words hit me like a physical blow. What the hell are you talking about? The company needs fresh leadership, Travis said, his voice smooth as oil. Someone who understands modern construction management. Someone who isn't stuck in the past. Stuck in the past? I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. I've been busting my A for this company for 15 years. I know every contractor, every supplier, every way to cut corners and pad invoices, Travis interrupted. The audit found some interesting discrepancies in your expense reports, Ryan. My blood ran cold. What audit? One of the lawyers slid a folder across the table. Inside were photocopies of receipts, invoices, and expense forms, all with my signature, all showing inflated costs and duplicate billing. These are fake, I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I knew how they sounded. The board doesn't think so, Dad said quietly. I'm sorry, son. This transition is what's best for the company. I looked around the table at faces I'd known for years. Board members who'd watched me grow up, who'd praised my work ethic and business acumen. Now they wouldn't meet my eyes. You orchestrated this, I said to Travis. He shrugged. I just showed them the facts. I stormed out of that meeting feeling like my entire world had collapsed. But as I sat in my car in the parking lot, something else began to take root. A cold, calculating fury that would sustain me through the next 3 months. That night, I went home to Megan. She was in the kitchen, making dinner, humming softly to herself. For a moment, I almost believed everything would be okay. She was my wife, my partner, she'd understand. How was your day, honey? She asked, without turning around. I lost the company, I said simply. The humming stopped. She turned slowly, her face carefully neutral. What do you mean? I told her everything. The fake audit, the board vote, Travis's smug face. Through it all, she nodded sympathetically, made all the right noises of support and outrage. That's terrible, Ryan, she said, wrapping her arms around me. But we'll get through this. We always do. Something in her tone felt off, but I was too devastated to analyze it properly. I just held her close and tried to pretend my life wasn't falling apart. Over the next few weeks, things got worse. I was officially terminated from Manning Construction with a severance package that was insultingly small. My reputation in the industry was in tatters. Word of the financial irregularities spread quickly through our tight-knit business community. Megan became increasingly distant. She started working late more often, taking phone calls in private, going out with girlfriends I'd never heard her mention before. When I questioned her about it, she accused me of being paranoid and controlling. "You're under a lot of stress," she said. "Maybe you should see someone. Talk to a therapist." The suggestion felt like another betrayal. I wasn't crazy. Something was genuinely wrong. That's when I started paying attention. Really paying attention. I noticed how Megan's phone was always face down on the table now. How she'd started password protecting everything. How she'd suddenly developed an interest in our family's financial situation, asking detailed questions about insurance policies and investment accounts. I started following her. I know how that sounds, but I had to know the truth. The first time, she went to lunch with a woman I didn't recognize. Nothing suspicious there. The second time, she went to a coffee shop and sat alone for an hour, constantly checking her phone. The third time, she went to Travis's apartment. I sat in my car across the street, watching the windows of his second-floor unit. The blinds were closed, but I could see shadows moving behind them. She stayed for 3 hours. When she came home that night, she was glowing. Energetic in a way I hadn't seen in months. "How was your day?" I asked. "Fine. Busy. I had lunch with Sarah from work, then did some shopping." She kissed my cheek and headed upstairs. "I'm exhausted. I think I'll take a bath." Sarah from work. I'd met Sarah dozens of times at company functions. She was 60 years old with gray hair and thick glasses. Nothing like the young brunette I'd seen Megan with at lunch. That night, while Megan slept, I went through her purse. Tucked behind her credit cards was a receipt from a hotel restaurant. The timestamp showed she'd been there during the 3 hours she was supposedly at Travis's apartment. But the receipt was for 2 meals. I photographed it with my phone and put everything back exactly as I'd found it. Then, I lay awake until dawn, staring at the ceiling, planning my next move. I couldn't do this alone. I needed help, and I needed it from someone Travis and Megan would never suspect. Murphy had been my college roommate and was now a criminal defense attorney with a reputation for handling complex fraud cases. He also had a network of private investigators and forensic accountants who specialized in following paper trails. "You look like hell," Murphy said when I walked into his downtown office. "I need your help," I said. "And I need you to keep this completely confidential." I told him everything: the company takeover, the fake audit, Megan's behavior, what I'd witnessed. Murphy listened without interruption, occasionally making notes on a yellow legal pad. "What exactly do you want me to do?" he asked when I finished. "I want to know what really happened with the company. I want to know who created those fake expense reports. And I want to know everything about what Megan's been doing." Murphy leaned back in his chair. "That's going to be expensive and potentially dangerous. If you're right about Travis framing you, he's not going to appreciate you digging into it." "I don't care about the cost. And I'm not afraid of Travis." "Maybe you should be," Murphy said. "A man who'll destroy his own brother's life to steal a company isn't someone you want to underestimate." But he agreed to help. Within a week, Murphy had connected me with Grant, a retired police detective who now worked as a private investigator. Grant was in his 50s, built like a linebacker, with gray eyes that missed nothing. "First rule of investigation," Grant told me over coffee: "assume everyone's lying. Second rule, follow the money. Third rule, document everything." We started with the company. Grant used his contacts in law enforcement to access financial records that showed the real story behind my termination. The fake expense reports had been created using software that could replicate signatures and official letterhead. The metadata on the digital files showed they'd been created just 2 weeks before the board meeting, long after the dates they were supposed to represent. More interesting was who had access to the company's financial systems. The login records showed that someone had been accessing my accounts using my credentials, but from IP addresses that weren't connected to any company location. "Your brother's been planning this for months," Grant said. "Maybe longer. He needed to get you out of the way, but he also needed to make sure you couldn't fight back legally." While Grant worked on the company angle, Murphy focused on Megan. We installed tracking software on her phone. Not exactly legal, but Murphy assured me it wouldn't be admissible in court anyway. We weren't planning to use it as evidence, just as a roadmap to the truth. The tracking revealed a pattern. 3 times a week, Megan would go to Travis's apartment building. But she wasn't just visiting him. She was also meeting with a forensic accountant named Jennifer Walsh, a woman who specialized in asset protection and offshore banking. They're planning something big, Murphy said, and it involves hiding money. Grant's investigation into our personal finances revealed that Megan had been slowly moving assets around for the past 6 months. Small amounts at first, a few $1,000s transferred from our joint savings account to a new account in her name only, then larger amounts. She'd also taken out a second mortgage on our house without my knowledge, using forged documents. She's been liquidating everything you jointly own, Grant explained, and she's been very careful to make it look legitimate. If you hadn't started paying attention when you did, you'd have woken up one morning to find yourself broke and homeless. But the most damaging discovery came from Megan's phone. Grant had managed to recover deleted text messages between her and Travis going back 8 months. The content was devastating. Megan, he's starting to get suspicious about the company situation. Travis, don't worry. Once the board votes, he'll be too busy dealing with that to notice anything else. Megan, what if he finds out about us? Travis, he won't, and even if he does, what's he going to do? He'll be financially ruined and legally vulnerable. He'll take whatever deal we offer him. Megan, sometimes I feel bad about this. Travis, you didn't feel bad last night when you were screaming my name? Megan, that's different. This is his whole life we're destroying. Travis, his whole life was never really his anyway. Dad always knew I was the better choice to run the company. And you always knew I was the better choice in bed. There were dozens of messages like this, documenting not just their affair, but their entire conspiracy to destroy me. They'd been planning to divorce once the financial transfers were complete. Megan would claim emotional misuse and get a restraining order, then take me for everything in the settlement. Travis would offer to buy her out of any remaining claims on the company for a fraction of their real value. I was their mark. I had been from the beginning. What do you want to do with this? Murphy asked after we'd gone through all the evidence. I looked at the pile of documents, the photographs, the printed text messages. 3 months of my life destroyed, documented in excruciating detail by the 2 people I'd trusted most. I want them to pay, I said, both of them. I want them to lose everything they took from me and everything they thought they were going to get. That's not going to be easy, Grant warned. They've covered their tracks pretty well. And they have resources now, your resources. Then we need to be smarter than they are, I said. We need to make them think they're winning right up until the moment they lose everything. Murphy smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. I think I know how we can do that. The key to destroying Travis and Megan was patience. They thought they'd already won, which made them careless. We needed to use that overconfidence against them. Phase 1 was financial. While they were busy moving money around and planning their future together, I was quietly buying back control of Manning Construction. Not directly, that would have tipped them off immediately. Instead, Murphy helped me set up a series of shell companies and limited liability corporations that began purchasing shares from other board members. It turns out that some of the board members who'd voted against me were having second thoughts. Travis's management style was abrasive and expensive. He'd fired several long-term employees and replaced them with expensive consultants. The company's profit margins were shrinking. Ryan always understood the business side better, one board member confided to Grant during what appeared to be a chance encounter at a bar. Travis has big ideas, but he doesn't understand the fundamentals. We also discovered that Travis had been making promises he couldn't keep. He told several major clients that Manning Construction could handle projects that were beyond the company's current capacity. When those projects started going over budget and behind schedule, the clients weren't happy. Within 6 weeks, my shell companies had acquired a 35% stake in Manning Construction. Not enough to control the company yet, but enough to cause problems if Travis tried to make any major changes. Phase 2 involved Megan's employer. She worked as a senior account manager for a prestigious marketing firm downtown. Her job required handling large client budgets and maintaining impeccable ethical standards. Any hint of financial impropriety would be grounds for immediate termination. Grant managed to document several instances where Megan had used company resources for personal purposes, making copies of financial documents, using the office computer to research asset protection strategies, even having flowers delivered to Travis's apartment using the company's account with the florist. None of these were major violations by themselves, but together they painted a picture of someone who was willing to misuse her position for personal gain. We didn't report her immediately. Instead, we documented everything and waited. Phase 3 was the most delicate. We needed to drive a wedge between Travis and Megan without making them suspicious. Grant's surveillance had revealed that Travis was also seeing someone else, a 20-something paralegal named Sharon who worked at a law firm across town from Manning Construction. Sharon didn't know about Megan, and Megan didn't know about Sharon. Travis was juggling both relationships while planning a future with neither of them. Men like your brother always think they're smarter than everyone else, Grant observed. That's usually what brings them down. We arranged for Sharon to accidentally discover evidence of Travis's relationship with Megan. Nothing dramatic, just a few strategic photographs left where she'd find them, a restaurant receipt with Megan's name on it in Travis's car. When Sharon confronted Travis, he denied everything. When she pressed him, he got angry. When she threatened to tell Megan, he made a mistake. Megan's just business, he told Sharon, not knowing that Grant was recording the conversation from the next booth. She's married to my brother. I'm using her to get information about his finances. It doesn't mean anything. Grant made sure Sharon got a copy of that recording. By the end of the second month, cracks were beginning to show in Travis and Megan's perfect plan. The first sign was financial. Travis had been expecting to have complete control over Manning Construction's resources by this point, but the shell companies I controlled were blocking several of his initiatives. When he tried to take out a large business loan using the company as collateral, the bank required approval from all major shareholders. My representatives voted no. Someone's buying up shares, Travis complained to Megan during one of their monitored phone calls. I don't know who it is, but they're making things difficult. Could it be Ryan? Megan asked. With what money? We cleaned him out, remember? But Travis was worried enough to hire his own private investigator to look into the shell companies. Murphy had anticipated this and created a deliberately confusing paper trail that would take weeks to unravel. By the time Travis figured out what was happening, it would be too late. The second sign was personal. Sharon's confrontation with Travis had made him paranoid and suspicious. He started questioning Megan about her other relationships, her past, her motivations for getting involved with him. He's acting weird, Megan told her sister during a phone call that Grant recorded. Like he doesn't trust me anymore. I thought this was what he wanted. Maybe he's having second thoughts about leaving his wife, her sister suggested. He's not married, but his brother is. And it's complicated. Jesus, Megan. You're sleeping with your husband's brother. That's messed up even for you. The conversation revealed something interesting. Megan's own family didn't think much of her moral compass. Her sister seemed unsurprised by the betrayal, suggesting this wasn't the first time Megan had done something like this. The third sign was professional. Travis's mismanagement of Manning Construction was becoming harder to hide. 2 major projects were significantly over budget, and one client was threatening to sue for breach of contract. The board members who'd initially supported Travis were starting to ask uncomfortable questions. Maybe we moved too fast on Ryan, one board member said during a meeting that Grant had managed to record. He knew how to keep projects on schedule and under budget. Ryan was stealing from the company, Travis replied, but he sounded less confident than he had 3 months earlier. The evidence against Ryan was pretty thin, another board member pointed out. And some of those expense reports looked questionable when I examined them more closely. Travis's position was becoming untenable, but he couldn't admit that without admitting he'd framed me. So instead, he doubled down, making increasingly desperate decisions that only made things worse. The fourth sign was the most significant. Grant's surveillance revealed that Travis and Megan were planning something more permanent than just stealing my money and my company. They were planning to eliminate me entirely. The conversation took place in Travis's apartment, but Grant had managed to plant a listening device during one of his maintenance visits to the building. He's getting too close to the truth, Travis said. That investigator he hired is asking questions about the expense reports. I thought you said those were foolproof, Megan replied. They were, but Ryan's not as stupid as we thought. He's found inconsistencies in the metadata. So what do we do? We accelerate the timeline. The life insurance policy on Ryan is worth $2 million. If something happened to him, an accident maybe, or a self-destruction brought on by financial stress and depression, you'd be a very wealthy widow. You're talking about eliminating him. I'm talking about solving a problem. Ryan's not going to just disappear quietly. He's going to keep fighting, keep investigating. Eventually, he's going to find something that brings us down, unless we stop him first. There was a long pause in the recording. Then Megan's voice, quieter now. How would we do it? Grant played the recording for me in Murphy's office. I listened to my wife and brother casually discussing my homicide with the same tone they might use to plan a vacation. We need to move faster, I said when the recording ended. They're planning to eliminate me. We need to be careful, Murphy warned. This recording might not be admissible in court, depending on how it was obtained. And if we move too quickly, they might destroy evidence or flee. What if we don't get them arrested? I asked. What if we just destroy them the way they destroyed me? Grant and Murphy exchanged glances. What exactly are you proposing? Murphy asked. I'm proposing we give them exactly what they think they want. And then we take it all away. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. We would let Travis and Megan believe they were successfully executing their homicide plot, right up until the moment when everything fell apart. First, we needed to create the appearance that I was in genuine danger of self-destruction. Grant helped me establish a pattern of behavior that would support this narrative. I started drinking more visibly, neglecting my appearance, making comments about feeling hopeless and trapped. I also began liquidating my remaining assets in ways that would look suspicious to anyone investigating. Large cash withdrawals, closing investment accounts, giving away personal possessions. To outside observers, it would look like a man preparing to end his life. Meanwhile, Murphy was working with federal investigators who were very interested in the evidence we'd gathered about financial fraud and conspiracy. But rather than arresting Travis and Megan immediately, the investigators agreed to let us build a stronger case. We want them for everything, the lead FBI agent told Murphy. Fraud, conspiracy, attempted homicide. But we need ironclad evidence. The key was getting Travis and Megan to incriminate themselves more explicitly. Grant suggested we use their own surveillance against them. They're going to want to make sure you're really dead, Grant explained. That means they'll need to see it happen, or at least see the aftermath. We can use that. We also needed to ensure that Dad wouldn't be collateral damage. The recording from Travis's apartment had revealed that they were planning to use Dad as a scapegoat, claiming that he'd discovered their affair and eliminated me in a fit of rage before taking his own life. This required a delicate touch. We couldn't simply warn Dad about the plot without risking him inadvertently tipping off Travis or Megan. Instead, we arranged for Dad to accidentally discover evidence of their relationship. Grant left photographs and documents where Dad would find them during a routine visit to Travis's apartment. The documents showed not just the affair, but also the financial fraud and the plan to frame Dad for my homicide. Dad's reaction was exactly what we'd hoped for. Rather than confronting Travis directly, he tried to gather more evidence on his own. This led him to install his own surveillance equipment in Travis's apartment, equipment that would capture everything we needed for the final phase of our plan. The timing had to be perfect. We needed Travis and Megan to make their move while Dad was in a position to witness it, but we also needed to ensure that Dad wouldn't actually be in danger. Your father's tougher than you think, Grant said. He built a construction company from nothing. He's not going to fold when the pressure gets serious. But I was still worried. Dad was 72 years old, and the stress of discovering his son's betrayal was taking a visible toll on him. We move tomorrow, I decided. I can't let this go on any longer. I told Megan I was going on a business trip to meet with potential investors who might be interested in funding a new construction company. It was partially true. Murphy had arranged for me to meet with some legitimate business people who were willing to play along with our deception. That's great, honey, Megan said, but I could see the wheels turning in her head. A business trip meant I'd be away from home, isolated, vulnerable. I'll be back Wednesday evening, I told her. Maybe we can go out to dinner, celebrate if the meetings go well. I'd like that, she said, kissing me goodbye. What she didn't know was that Grant and I had arranged elaborate surveillance of both her and Travis from the moment I left the house. We knew within minutes when she called Travis to tell him I'd left town. We recorded the conversation where they finalized their plan. This is perfect, Travis said. He'll be driving back from the airport Wednesday evening. That stretch of highway between here and the airport has several isolated areas where accidents happen all the time. What if the police investigate too closely? Megan asked. They won't. Financially ruined businessmen, driving alone at night, probably been drinking. It'll look like self-destruction by car crash. You'll be the grieving widow who inherits everything. Except I wasn't actually out of town. I was in a hotel room 20 minutes away, watching them through Grant's surveillance equipment and preparing for the final act. Wednesday evening, I called Megan from my flight. I'm just boarding now, I told her. Should be home by 9:30. Drive safely, she said. I love you. Those were the last words my wife ever spoke to me as anything other than an enemy. Instead of driving home from the airport, I drove to our house through a route that avoided all the main roads. Grant had confirmed that Travis and Megan were both at his apartment, believing they were tracking my progress through my cell phone's GPS signal. What they were actually tracking was a phone Grant had planted in a rental car that was indeed driving the route I was supposed to take. The driver was an undercover FBI agent who was prepared to avoid any accident Travis might try to arrange. I parked 2 blocks away from my house and approached through the backyard. The spare key was still hidden under the fake rock by the back door, a detail from our old life that Megan hadn't thought to change. The house was dark and quiet. I went upstairs to our bedroom and retrieved the .44 Magnum from its hiding place in my closet. Then I settled in to wait. At 9:15, I heard cars pulling into the driveway. Megan's voice, then Travis's, then a third voice I didn't recognize. Through the bedroom window, I could see them approaching the front door. I moved to the wardrobe and climbed inside, leaving the door slightly open so I could see and hear everything. They entered the house quietly. Megan was carrying a suitcase, probably packed with clothes and documents she'd need when she fled after my end. Travis had a small duffel bag and was talking on his cell phone. The car went off the road about 10 minutes ago, he was saying. No, nobody survived. It's over. The third person was a man I'd never seen before. Tall, thin, wearing a leather jacket. He looked like the kind of person you'd hire to make accidents happen. Where's the body? Megan asked. Being handled, the stranger said. By morning, there'll be nothing left to identify, just like we discussed. And the insurance? Travis asked. She'll be able to file the claim next week, the stranger replied. Accidental end, full payout. $2 million. They were in the living room now, directly below the bedroom. I could hear every word clearly. I can't believe it's really over, Megan said. It's not over yet, Travis replied. We still need to deal with Dad. He's been asking too many questions lately. What do you mean, deal with him? I mean, he needs to have an accident too. Maybe grief over losing his son drove him to self-destruction. Tragic, but believable. Jesus, Travis. He's your father. He's a liability, just like Ryan was. That's when I heard the sound I'd been waiting for. A car door slamming outside, followed by heavy footsteps on the front porch. Dad walked into the house without knocking, his face grim and determined. We need to talk, he said. Travis and Megan froze. The stranger took a step toward the door, but Dad was blocking his path. About what? Travis asked, trying to sound casual. About what you did to your brother. About what you've been planning to do to me. Dad pulled out a small digital recorder and set it on the coffee table. I know about the affair. I know about the fraud. I know about the homicide you just arranged. And I know you're planning to eliminate me too. The stranger reached inside his jacket, but Dad was faster than he looked. He pulled out a pistol and aimed it at the man's chest. I wouldn't, Dad said calmly. The police are already on their way. That was my cue. I climbed out of the wardrobe, .44 Magnum in hand, and walked downstairs. Travis and Megan spun around when they heard my footsteps. The look of shock on their faces was worth every moment of the past 3 months. Miss me? I asked. You're supposed to be dead, Megan whispered. Sorry to disappoint you, I said, keeping the tool trained on the stranger, who was still reaching for whatever weapon he had hidden in his jacket. Travis was the first to recover from the shock. This doesn't change anything. You can't prove? Actually, I can prove everything, I interrupted. The fake expense reports, the financial fraud, your affair with my wife, the plan to homicide me and frame Dad for it. All of it. Dad stepped forward, his own tool still aimed at the stranger. Ryan's been working with the FBI for the past month. Every conversation you've had, every meeting, every transaction, all of it's been recorded. That's impossible, Megan said, but her voice was shaking. We were careful. You were arrogant, I corrected. You thought you were so much smarter than everyone else that you got sloppy. Did you really think I wouldn't notice when you started moving money around? Did you think I wouldn't figure out that the expense reports were fake? The stranger started to move again, but Grant's voice came from the kitchen doorway. I wouldn't do that if I were you. Grant emerged with his own weapon drawn, followed by 2 FBI agents. Vincent Russo, one of the agents said, reading from a warrant. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit homicide, wire fraud, and racketeering. So the stranger had a name, and apparently a criminal record that made him exactly the kind of person Travis would hire for wet work. Travis Manning, the second agent continued, you're under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, and attempted homicide. This is insane, Travis said as they cuffed him. You can't prove any of this. We have recordings of you planning the homicide, the agent replied. We have financial records showing the fraud. We have testimony from multiple witnesses. We have enough evidence to put you away for the rest of your life. Megan tried to run, but she didn't get far. Grant tackled her before she reached the door. Megan Manning, he said, helping her to her feet. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit homicide, fraud, and infidelity. Wait, scratch that last one. Infidelity is not actually a federal crime. As they led her away in handcuffs, Megan looked back at me one last time. I never loved you, she said. I know, I replied, but I loved you. That's what made this so easy. After they were gone, Dad and I sat in the living room, surrounded by the detritus of what had been our family. I'm sorry, Dad said finally. About the company, about not seeing what Travis was doing, about not trusting you. You couldn't have known, I said. He fooled all of us. Not all of us. You figured it out. Eventually, almost too late. Dad was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, the board voted yesterday to reverse Travis's appointment as CEO. Unanimous decision. They want you back. What about the expense report scandal? The FBI's forensic accountants proved the reports were fabricated. Your reputation's been restored. If anything, people are more impressed with you now than they were before. They know you fought back against impossible odds and won. I should have felt triumphant. I'd won. Travis and Megan were going to prison. I'd gotten my company back, and everyone now knew the truth about what had happened. But mostly I just felt tired. What happens now? Dad asked. Now we rebuild, I said. The company, our relationship, everything they tried to destroy. And Travis? I thought about my brother. The boy who'd followed me around when we were kids, who'd looked up to me, who'd somehow grown into a man capable of destroying everything our family had built. Travis made his choice, I said. Now he gets to live with the consequences. The trials took 2 years. Travis was convicted on all counts and sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. Megan got 15 years for her role in the conspiracy. Vincent Russo, the man they'd hired to arrange my accident, cut a deal with prosecutors and testified against both of them in exchange for a reduced sentence. The media coverage was extensive. Family business betrayal leads to homicide plot was the headline in the local newspaper. The story made national news for a few days. Wealthy family, Zex, betrayal, and attempted homicide were all elements that attracted attention. I tried to avoid the interviews and press conferences, but Murphy insisted that telling our side of the story was important for rebuilding my reputation in the business community. You're not the sufferer here, he said. You're the hero who exposed corruption and prevented a homicide. That's the narrative we want people to remember. Manning Construction survived the scandal, though it took some time to rebuild relationships with clients and partners. Dad formally retired and handed me full control of the company, this time legitimately, with proper documentation and board approval. The house felt different after everything that happened. Too many memories, too much history soaked into the walls. I sold it and moved into a downtown loft near the office. Clean lines, minimal furniture, no reminders of the life I'd shared with Megan. Grant continued working as my security consultant. The experience had taught me that trust was a luxury I could no longer afford carelessly. Paranoia is not always a bad thing, Grant said during one of our weekly meetings. It keeps you sharp. Murphy handled the legal aftermath, insurance claims, asset recovery, civil suits. We managed to recover most of the money Travis and Megan had stolen, plus damages. The life insurance company voided the policy when they learned about the homicide plot, but that was fine by me. I was alive, and that was worth more than $2 million. Sharon, Travis's other girlfriend, came forward during the trial. She testified about his pattern of manipulation and deceit, adding credibility to our case. After the conviction, she sent me a letter apologizing for her role in the whole mess. "I should have seen what kind of man he was," she wrote. "I should have warned you." I didn't reply. She'd been another sufferer, just like me. Travis had used her the same way he'd used everyone else. The hardest part was rebuilding my relationship with Dad. The betrayal had aged him, carved new lines into his face, and put a tremor in his hands that hadn't been there before. "I keep thinking I should have seen it coming," he said one evening as we reviewed company reports in my office. "Travis was always competitive, always looking for shortcuts, but I never thought he'd—" "None of us did," I said. "He was family. That's what made it possible. We trusted him because we loved him." The company prospered under my leadership. Without Travis's expensive consultants and grandiose schemes, our profit margins improved dramatically. We took on smaller projects that we could execute flawlessly rather than chasing contracts that were beyond our capabilities. I also implemented new oversight procedures, financial audits, background checks, separation of duties. Grant helped design security protocols that would make it much harder for anyone to pull off the kind of fraud Travis had attempted. "You're building a fortress," Grant observed. "I'm building something that can't be destroyed by betrayal," I corrected. But late at night, alone in my loft, I sometimes wondered if I'd become someone I didn't recognize. The old Ryan had been trusting, optimistic, willing to see the best in people. The new Ryan was suspicious, calculating, always looking for the angle. Maybe that's what survival cost. 2 years after the trials ended, I got a call from the federal prison where Travis was serving his sentence. "Your brother wants to see you," the warden said. "He's requested a visit." I almost said no immediately. What was there to talk about? Travis had made his choices, and now he was living with the consequences. But something, curiosity maybe, or a need for closure, made me agree. The visiting room was exactly what you'd expect from a federal prison. Harsh fluorescent lighting, plastic chairs, guards watching everything. Travis sat at a metal table, wearing an orange jumpsuit that made his skin look sallow. He'd lost weight. Prison had aged him in ways that went beyond the 2 years since I'd last seen him. His hair was graying at the temples, and there were new lines around his eyes. "You came," he said when I sat down across from him. "I'm here." "What do you want?" "To apologize, to explain." "It's a little late for either of those." Travis leaned forward, his hands clasped on the table between us. "I know you probably hate me." "I don't hate you," I interrupted. "Hating you would require caring about you, and I don't anymore. You're just a stranger who used to be my brother." The words hit him like a physical blow. I could see him flinch, see something die in his eyes. "Ryan, please. I need you to understand." "Understand what? That you framed me for fraud, that you stole my company, that you seduced my wife and convinced her to help you homicide me?" "It wasn't supposed to go that far. The homicide thing, that was Megan's idea. She said you were getting too close to the truth, that we needed a permanent solution." "So you're blaming her now?" "I'm not blaming anyone. I'm trying to explain what happened. What happened is that you decided you wanted what was mine, and you were willing to destroy me to get it. Everything else is just details." Travis was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. "I was jealous. I'd always been jealous. Dad loved you more, trusted you more. You were the golden boy who could do no wrong. I was just the younger brother who had to work twice as hard for half the recognition." "That's not true. Isn't it? When did Dad ever ask my opinion about the business? When did he ever praise my work the way he praised yours? I spent 15 years trying to prove I was as good as you, and it was never enough. So you decided to prove it by framing me for fraud and stealing my wife? I decided to prove it by taking everything that made you special and making it mine. Instead, the honesty was brutal, but at least it was honest." "Did it work?" I asked. "Do you feel like you proved you were better than me?" Travis laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Look around, Ryan. I'm in federal prison for the next 20 years. You're running a successful company and living your life. How do you think it worked out?" I think it worked out exactly the way it should have. Yeah, me too. We sat in silence for several minutes. Around us, other inmates visited with family members, lawyers, friends. Normal people living normal lives, trying to maintain connections despite the circumstances. But there was no connection left between Travis and me. Whatever bond we'd shared as brothers had been severed the moment he decided to destroy me. Is there anything else? I asked finally. Dad stopped visiting, Travis said. I thought maybe you could. No, you haven't even heard what I was going to ask. I don't need to. Dad makes his own decisions about who he wants in his life. I'm not going to try to influence him either way. He's my father, too. Then you should have thought about that before you tried to frame him for homicide. Travis closed his eyes. I never meant for him to get hurt, but you were willing to let it happen if it served your purposes. Yes. At least he didn't try to deny it. What about Megan? I asked. Do you still see her? She's in a different facility. Women's prison in Pennsylvania. We're not allowed to communicate. Do you miss her? Travis considered the question seriously. I miss what I thought she was, but I'm not sure that person ever really existed. I think she was playing a role, just like I was. Probably. Do you miss her? The question caught me off guard. Did I miss Megan? I missed the woman I'd thought I'd married, the life I thought we were building together. But that had all been an illusion. I miss being married, I said finally. I miss having someone to come home to, someone to share things with. But I don't miss her specifically. Have you met anyone else? That's none of your business. I know. I hope you find someone who deserves you. Like you found someone who deserved you? Travis winced. I deserved exactly what I got. The visit was almost over. A guard was signaling that time was up. Will you come again? Travis asked as I stood up. No. Will you tell Dad I asked about him? If he asks, I'll tell him we talked, but I'm not going to try to repair your relationship with him. That's between you and him. Travis nodded. I understand. I walked toward the exit, then stopped and turned back. Travis? Yeah? I forgive you. His eyes filled with tears. Thank you. But forgiveness doesn't mean I trust you. And it doesn't mean I want you in my life. It just means I'm not going to carry around anger about what you did. I'm moving on. I understand, he said again. I left the prison and drove back to the city, feeling lighter somehow. The conversation hadn't changed anything between us. Travis was still going to spend the next 18 years in federal prison, and I was still going to live my life without him in it. But at least now I knew that chapter was really closed. 5 years after the trials, Manning Construction was more successful than it had ever been. We'd expanded into 3 new markets, acquired 2 smaller companies, and established a reputation for integrity that attracted the best clients and employees. Dad had fully retired but still came to the office occasionally to offer advice or just to check on how things were going. His health had improved once the stress of the scandal faded, and he'd started dating a widow named Helen, who made him laugh in ways I hadn't seen since my mother died. I'd also started dating again, carefully, cautiously, but genuinely. Her name was Sarah, and she was a pediatric nurse who had no connection to the construction industry or my family's history. We'd met at a charity event and had been seeing each other for 6 months. She knew about Travis and Megan, of course. The story was too public and too much a part of who I'd become for me to hide it. But she seemed to understand that I needed time to learn how to trust again. You're worth waiting for, she told me one evening as we sat on my balcony, looking out over the city lights. How can you be sure? Because I've seen how you treat people. Your employees, your father, even strangers. You're a good man who got hurt badly. That doesn't make you broken. It just makes you careful. I was thinking about asking her to move in with me. It felt like the right time, the right person, the right circumstances. But I wanted to be absolutely certain before I took that step. That's when I got the call from the prison warden. I'm sorry to have to tell you this, Mr. Manning, but your brother Travis was found dead in his cell this morning. The words hit me like a physical blow. What happened? It appears to be self-destruction. He hanged himself sometime during the night. He left a note addressed to you. I sat down heavily, trying to process the information. Travis was dead. My brother, the man who'd tried to destroy me, who'd spent the last 5 years in prison because of his choices, was gone. Mr. Manning? Are you there? Yes, I'm here. What did the note say? I can't read it to you over the phone, but I can arrange for you to receive it. Would you like me to mail it to you? Yes, please. I hung up the phone and sat in my office, staring out the window at the city below. I should have felt something: sadness, anger, relief, vindication. Instead, I felt numb. Travis had been 38 years old. In another universe, another life, we might have been business partners, best friends, the kind of brothers who supported each other through everything. Instead, he died alone in a prison cell, serving time for trying to homicide me. The note arrived 3 days later, written in Travis's familiar handwriting on prison stationery. Asterisk Ryan. By the time you read this, I'll be gone. I want you to know that this isn't about guilt or remorse. It's about acceptance. I've had 5 years to think about what I did and why I did it, and I've come to understand that I was never going to be able to live with myself. Not because I got caught, not because I went to prison, but because I became someone I didn't recognize, someone who could look his brother in the eye and plan his homicide. I told myself it was about the company, about proving I was as good as you. But the truth is simpler and uglier than that. I was weak and jealous, and I let those weaknesses turn me into a monster. You said you forgave me when you visited, and I believe you meant it, but I could never forgive myself. Every day in here, I woke up remembering what I'd done, what I'd been willing to do. It was eating me alive. I want you to know that none of it was your fault. You were a good brother, a good son, a good man. You deserved better from me, and I'm sorry I couldn't be the person you thought I was. Take care of Dad. Tell him I'm sorry for everything. Tell him I love him, even though I never figured out how to show it properly. And Ryan, don't let what I did make you afraid to trust people. Don't let my betrayal poison the rest of your life. You're stronger than I ever was, but strength without hope is just another kind of prison. Be happy. You've earned it. Your brother, Travis Asterisk. I read the letter 3 times, then folded it carefully and put it in my desk drawer. Sarah found me there an hour later, staring at nothing. What's wrong? She asked, sitting down across from my desk. I told her about the call, about the letter, about the strange mix of emotions I was feeling. Are you okay? She asked when I finished. I don't know. I thought I'd put all of this behind me, but he was still your brother. Yeah, he was still my brother. She came around the desk and put her arms around me. I'm sorry. The weird thing is, I think he was right about forgiveness, about not letting this poison the rest of my life. I spent so much energy being angry at him, being suspicious of everyone, being afraid to trust anyone. That was natural. You were protecting yourself. But I don't want to live that way anymore. Life's too short, and there are too many good people in the world to spend all my time worrying about the bad ones. Sarah smiled. Does this mean you're ready to let me move some clothes into your closet? Despite everything, I laughed. Is that your way of asking to move in? I'm a nurse. I'm very practical about these things. In that case, yes, I think I'd like that very much. 6 months later, Dad walked me down the aisle at my wedding to Sarah. It was a small ceremony. Close friends, family, a few key employees from the company. Nothing fancy, nothing that would attract media attention. Just 2 people who'd learned to trust each other, surrounded by people who cared about them. During the reception, Dad pulled me aside. I'm proud of you, he said. Not just for surviving what Travis and Megan did to you, but for not letting it destroy you. I had good teachers, I replied. You taught me that integrity matters more than profit, that family means something, that a man's word is his bond. Travis had the same teachers. Travis made different choices. Dad nodded. He did. And in the end, we all have to live with the choices we make. As the evening wound down, Sarah and I stood on the terrace of the country club, looking out over the city lights. In the distance, I could see the Manning Construction Building, the company that had been at the center of so much drama and pain, now thriving under honest leadership. Any regrets? Sarah asked. About what? About how it all turned out. About Travis, about Megan, about the path that led you here. I thought about it seriously. The past 7 years had been a roller coaster of betrayal, investigation, trials, and recovery. I'd lost a brother, a wife, and a naive faith in the goodness of people. But I'd also gained perspective, strength, and ultimately a deeper appreciation for the people who genuinely cared about me. No regrets, I said finally. If none of it had happened, I might never have met you. I might never have learned to tell the difference between people who love you and people who just want something from you. That's very philosophical for a construction company CEO. I've had a lot of time to think about it. We went back inside to say goodbye to our guests. As people began to leave, Grant approached me. "Congratulations," he said, shaking my hand. "You picked a good one this time?" "How can you tell?" "Professional instinct. Also, I ran a background check on her." "You did not." "I'm kidding, mostly. But she's clean. No hidden debts, no criminal record, no secret boyfriends plotting your demise." "That's reassuring. The bar is pretty low after your last wife." As Grant walked away, I reflected on how much my life had changed. 7 years ago, I'd been a trusting man who believed that family loyalty and marital vows meant something. That man would have been horrified by the suspicion and security measures that were now second nature to me. But that man also would have been destroyed by Travis and Megan's betrayal. The man I'd become, more careful, more observant, more protective of what mattered, had not just survived, but thrived. The .44 Magnum was still locked in my safe at home. I'd never fired it, never even loaded it with live ammunition. It had been a prop in a performance designed to make Travis and Megan reveal their true intentions. But keeping it served as a reminder that sometimes the threat of violence was more powerful than violence itself. More importantly, it reminded me that I was capable of more than I'd ever imagined. When pushed to the edge, when everything I cared about was threatened, I'd found reserves of cunning and determination I didn't know I possessed. "Ready to go home, Mr. Manning?" Sarah asked, taking my arm. "Ready, Mrs. Manning." We walked out to the car together, husband and wife, partners in the truest sense of the word. Behind us, the country club was cleaning up the remnants of our celebration. Ahead of us lay a future that was uncertain but no longer frightening. I'd learned the hardest lesson life had to offer, that the people closest to you were capable of the deepest betrayals. But I'd also learned something more important, that surviving betrayal was possible, that trust could be rebuilt, and that happiness was still achievable even after your world had been shattered. As we drove through the city toward our home, I thought about Travis one last time. He'd been wrong about so many things, but he'd been right about one. I deserved to be happy. And finally, after 7 years of fighting and rebuilding and learning to trust again, I was. The Magnum Accord was complete, not the version Travis and Megan had planned, where I ended up dead and they ended up rich. But my version, where justice was served, truth prevailed, and the good guys actually won. I pulled into our driveway and helped Sarah out of the car. Tomorrow, we'd leave for our honeymoon. Next week, we'd start our life together. Next month, Dad would officially transfer full ownership of Manning Construction to me. But tonight, we were just a married couple going home together, leaving the past behind and facing the future without fear. I locked the car and took Sarah's hand. Together, we walked toward our front door, toward our new life, toward whatever came next. Behind us, the city lights twinkled like stars, beautiful and distant and full of possibilities.